And welcome. Thank you, everybody, for joining us, the Research Triangle PowerShell user group. It is June 17th, and we are super excited to have Justin Grote come talk to us about Windows Terminal and give us a ton of great knowledge. Take it away, Justin.
Thanks, Phil. And thank you, everybody, for having me. I'm looking forward to showing off some of the stuff that we've done here and hoping to give you another tool to put in your toolbox. So again, my name is Justin Grote. I'm a data center solutions architect with Allied Digital. Allied Digital is a managed service provider and IT solutions provider. We basically help a lot of departments take over environments, and we provide a full 24/7 NOC capability, et cetera. And my role in all of that is I manage a lot of our infrastructure. And so when you're not just managing one IT infrastructure, but you're managing hundreds, the ability to take lessons that you learn from individual clients and be able to scale those out across all your clients is really powerful. And that's where a lot of my knowledge of PowerShell comes from. My PowerShell journey kind of started back in 2006, 2007 days with Exchange 2007. That was really my first real exposure to it. I had played with it a little bit, but that was the first time when I really needed like the rubber to hit the road to work with it. Prior to that, I was an old network guy, so I wasn't like a complete stranger to command lines, and I had some good amount of Linux experience. But I know the one thing that grabbed me about PowerShell right away was that the output was not text, that the output was objects, and that I didn't have to write these scripts to like take this weird output from one program and put it in the other. Or if I wanted to investigate a certain thing, it was just adding a property to the thing. I mean, that blew my mind, and that really got me realizing like this is a really powerful thing. And I really appreciate Jeffrey Snover and all the team to have always fulfilled their part of the PowerShell sacred vow, which is that if you learn PowerShell, it will reinvest. You don't have to relearn it. It will carry itself into so many other areas of your work and transform your entire experience. And that is true for me. I mean, I would not be where I am now without what PowerShell has given me and given me the tools to just really excel in what I do. So, but PowerShell, part of that is the shell, and part of that is how do we interact with it. And there's lots of different ways we can do that. We have tools like command line prompts that everybody's familiar with. There's the typical PowerShell prompt you're used to seeing on a server. Some of you fancy lads have probably used tools like Commander, CMDer, or Xterm, or other tools to kind of get a little bit fancier console. And all those were really good options, but none of them were really like kind of supported options. They were kind of third-party options. And Microsoft realized, especially once they really started to lean more into open source and lean more into those type of tools, that they needed to have a first-class terminal to be able to handle these kind of things. So one key distinction I really want to make is that the terminal is not PowerShell, and PowerShell is not the terminal. CMD is not the terminal. The terminal is just an interface. It's a way to get at these different things. And I'll show some information more about what that looks like. But the key thing here is that Windows Terminal is you can use Windows Terminal for any kind of command line based thing. If you want to use it with your Linux, if you want to use it with SSHing to other systems, if you want to use it with PowerShell, great. If you want to use it with CMD, great. If you just want to stay there, it's just your way into those and providing you a much better way to do that. So what really is Windows PowerShell? And I think I may need to stop and restart because I got to notice my audio dropped there. That should take care of that. All right, so it's time to get hyped. This is the intro video that they provided when they first announced Windows Terminal. If you haven't seen this, I like it a lot. So here we go.
I move with style. I know how to run wild. Taking over the spotlight. I'm on a roll, ready for the show now. It's go time. Watch what I do. Watch what I do. I see you looking. Watch what I do. Oh my. Oh my. Watch what I do.
All right, so how's that for a nice little piece of marketing? By the way, don't look too closely at that video. That was a proof of concept, so there's a lot of stuff in there. You're like, oh, I can click links and they open up. Yeah, that'll be there, but it's not quite there yet. But that's the video that they showed at Ignite, and but it still provides a really good overview of the level of additional experience that you can get over just having a regular command line. one of those key things is like really power to customization. You know, one thing that I talk about a lot in terms of like advocating for things like dark mode for people and color syntax and stuff is these seem like a lot of the time like these are just kind of fluff and us having fun and that kind of thing. But when you really get into PowerShell, and especially if you're writing a lot of scripts, having visual context and having the ability to have certain colors mean certain things or have various views does matter because it'll draw your eye to things. It'll make you work faster. You know, if variables are a certain color versus other things, you know, that matters. And also just being in a comfortable environment helps you be more productive. So these are valuable business things just from the aesthetic aspect, in addition to the functional aspects of the additional abilities that things like Windows Terminal give you. And so these are just some examples of community things of different ways you can go with it. You can go real classic, you can go fancy, you can do light themes, you can do transparent things, but there's a lot of different ways that you can view and customize this. That's it for my slides, because I don't want to waste your guys' time with a bunch of PowerPoint. So I say we just kind of get into it. Oops, get a little fast. So let me go ahead and bring up the star of the show here, Windows Terminal. And so right off the bat, you kind of see I got kind of my nice little minimalist view here. This is not what it looks like by default, but just kind of want to give you a view here. So let's get this guy reset here. So this is going to be my demo script. The nice thing about this demo script is a very simple one you can get. I'll have a link to it at the end of the thing. But it's really handy for doing demos because it's going to show you every command that I'm going to do before I do it, so you can see what I'm doing. So first of all, first thing I want to do is I want to factory reset my Windows terminal. So I'm going to pick 0 from there. So to do that, the Windows terminal keeps it in this kind of special location. Now, Windows terminal is a UWP app, a universal app. You install it from the Windows Store. But so it is able to store in these kind of special locations. And it's easy to sync as a result because it's everything about the terminal is kept in this one settings JSON. I'll get into that here in just a little bit, but for right now, I just want to get this back to what it looks like when you first open it. So I did that, remove the file. Let's go and close it and reopen it. And here we go. There's a little bit different base look there. All right, so we got kind of a short thing, but already, like, this is fresh out of the box. I literally just, you saw, I just ran a remove item on the settings. And so this is out of the box settings. And so out of the box, it already detected that I had Windows PowerShell installed. And I've already got these tabs where I can go straight to PowerShell. It knows that I have command prompt, obviously. It knows I got PowerShell. Oh, it detected I have PowerShell preview on here too. There's my preview. And it also knows I'm using Scoop as an installer. If you're not familiar with Scoop, it's a lot like Chocolatey, but it's really good for dev tools because it's really designed to save things without admin rights, save them in their own special folder, not pollute your path, any of that kind of stuff. And it's completely written in PowerShell. That's at scoop.sh. Recommend you check it out. I use it every day for my day-to-day tools, but we can get to that a bit more. But it automatically detected without me installing, using some new detection logic that's built into PowerShell to know that there's a PowerShell there, even though its location is not in one of the standard paths. And I have a WSL on this. If you're not familiar with WSL, it's Windows Subsystem for Linux, which basically lets you run versions of Linux on top of your standard Windows 10 machine. And I have a couple here that are already depicted. I installed Alpine, which is a sort of very stripped down version of Linux. And it detected it, and I can bring that up right here very quickly. And I got kind of my standard Ubuntu terminal. And there he is. He's all good to go. And this is just a Ubuntu Linux running locally on my system. But that's all the functionality right out of the box it already knows about. And then you also have Cloud Shell if you want to connect to Cloud Shell. That's there. If you're not familiar with Azure Cloud Shell, it's a terminal where you can either get Bash or PowerShell, and it basically runs in a small little virtual machine out in Azure, and it automatically gets certain identities so that you can use it to run scripts, get secrets, pull stuff from key vaults, and have that all in a nice centralized place that it's able to sync really, really well. So Cloud Shell is definitely worth something to check out. So other than that, you get this very nice kind of basic interface, and I have all my tabs here, which is a really nice improvement over what you would typically see with like a standard command prompt. You know, I got a few more colors here. It's looking good, and can add new ones anytime. I got some kind of shortcuts, as you can see here, are already kind of built in, and then I got my settings. So what do the settings look like? One of the really nice things about Windows Terminal is that it utilizes a JSON file for its configuration. So if you're not familiar with JSON, JSON is a configuration. If you're familiar with like XML or INI files, it's just another way to kind of like store configuration. It's primarily meant to be read by machines, but it's actually fairly legible, certainly a lot more than XML, I think, to kind of quickly scan things. So this is the default config that gets generated when you create it. And so again, the way that I got to that was I just hit the drop down here and went to settings. And then it opened it up. I had it, my Visual Studio Code here set to pre-open it, but you can open it in Notepad or any file that you want. And this has all these kind of default settings. And so you see, these are all the ones that were automatically detected. You can see this source thing is where it's like, oh, okay, I automatically found that this is here and I put it in here. As well as some of the default key bindings. Okay, copy, paste, kind of the typical stuff you expect. These are here because if you're the kind, it's extremely customizable and powerful. Like if you don't want Control-C to work in the room because you're used to like Control-C being cancel, but you don't actually want to copy things, you have that available. And there are a ton of keyboard shortcuts that are available. For instance, you can split into panes and such, which I'll show later. If you want to do a full-on Zen mode, you can do Alt-Enter, and now you are in the world of your console working on whatever you want, and then bring it back out. So the main reason I bring up this settings page is because one really nice thing is that in VS Code, at least, it has a schema. So if you want to go through here and change some things, if I want to look at, say, like my kind of default PowerShell here, I have, bring that back up. Let me put these side by side. If I have my default PowerShell, okay, here's this PowerShell guy here. Well, I want a setting. What can I do here? Well, let me start with a quote. It's like, oh, look, here's all the different things I can set. Interesting. All right. How about, I don't know, how about let's change the background color. Oh, nice. It gave me kind of a default that's already there. Let me try like FFAA. That's nice. Kind of a magenta. All right. And now I'm just going to hit Control S to save. Hey, look at that. It changed immediately. Really nice thing about this configuration is as you make changes, the second you save it, it applies it to Windows PowerShell. So if I take this guy out, comment him back out and save, on again. Really handy for like testing new configurations, testing out items, and really being able to manage and manipulate what your console looks like. And that applies to a lot of the keyboard shortcuts down here. There's a search box. So one thing is that if you, I think I have a nice file at the bottom here that has a ton of content. See where I'll just do the old settings.json. So there's we go. I got a big file, bunch of junk in it, etc. I can do Control-Shift-F and search for PowerShell, and it'll search in my console and find it. That's really nice. If you're going through a log file and you're trying to find them, you don't have to dump it to Notepad. You don't have to dump it out. You just have nice native searching. You can make it case insensitive or case sensitive. Really handy when you're just kind of going there and trying to get at an individual thing. Another thing that you can do is make tabs. Give me 1 second here. I'm sorry, I mean panes. So for instance, if I have a window like this, I can do, but default is Alt-Shift-D. And oh, I split to a second window here, so I can run two things at the same time. Maybe I want to have a second pane here and view a couple different terminals. Maybe I want to split it again, and split it again, and split it again, and split it again. And you see where this is going. I'm almost making like the perfect equation here. But you can split these pages however you want to do, kind of up, down, left, right, etc. And have your view so that maybe you're working on something over here, running your pester tests over here. And yeah, these are a lot of things you can do in VS Code and ISE and etc. But sometimes when you just need to have that console, it's really nice and really powerful to have that available. So let's go back to my demo script here. So we've kind of seen here about the settings, various settings we can do, keyboard shortcuts, how we can customize them, that kind of thing. So what are some of the things that we can do with this? Well, let me go ahead and get a fresh terminal here, load my little demo script here. All right, well, first of all, I have kind of a terminal profile that I've set up, kind of keep it on my OneDrive, etc. I got my settings just how I like it, change a few things here, change a few things there. And so you can just restore the profile. So if you have a profile you want, all you got to do is copy it from wherever your profile is to wherever you want it to go. So you can sync that using whatever you want to use. See, there's a question real quick about the, okay, it was answered as far as the splitting is Alt-Shift-D. That's the default. All that stuff is customizable. Every shortcut is customizable. So I'm just going to copy my settings here and bring them back. And I'll do that. And oh, things kind of changed a little bit. Copied my settings, go over here. Oh, there's some new stuff here. A couple new schemes, some customizations, some extra defaults here. So let's see. Oh, look, so I got a nice kind of background here. I got my nice little pulsating icon here to kind of let me know that I'm in PowerShell. And oh, look, this menu's got some new stuff. Look, these icons are different. These icons are all customized. Things are kind of sorted. There's a couple new things here, like an SSH and a PowerShell remoting. So let's look at a couple here. Let's go to PowerShell preview. And oh, it's kind of got a kind of deeper purple background than the other one. Kind of easier visual indicators. Take another one, just standard Windows PowerShell. Hey, a nice blue background, so I know when I'm working there. And these are the things that I'm talking about, is when you're working in something, like if you want to know if you're in PowerShell versus Windows PowerShell versus this, you could do sir $PS version table and like, okay, that's what I'm working on. Or you can just, by knowing the context, when you set up your environment, know, hey, this blue background gives me the warm fuzzy that I'm in PowerShell. And it's because you can change stuff in real time, which I'll show some later. If you want to do like an admin session, maybe you make it bright red or you put a construction background on it. So you know, hey, things I'm changing in here, I'm doing as an admin. So maybe I want to be careful about what I'm doing. And there's our Ubuntu. Got our nice little Linux icon down here, brought up my Ubuntu. And of course, I have my PowerShell in Ubuntu as well. Well, maybe not this one because this is my demo system, but I think I maybe put it in Alpine. Another smaller Linux that I have here to do some Linux stuff, do some Docker stuff, etc. Get my nice highlighting. Slightly different theme. That's one thing that's kind of interesting, like PS version table there. If I go here, PS version table. Okay, this is a little bit more, kind of looks a lot like VS Code. Nice kind of format. My theme I made to kind of look so it looks like VS Code, the default view, because I like kind of that consistency. I know when I'm looking at a variable, it's that nice cyan color. When I'm looking at text, it's that nice orange color. But when I'm in like standard PowerShell, oh, this looks like what it normally used to when I open a command line PowerShell. This is actually a built-in theme called Campbell. So if I bring another PowerShell over here, it looks pretty similar. A little bit different, but the colors are pretty much the same. And that kind of reminds me, because I'm used to doing these things in the kind of the normal, small, the old PowerShell console. And I have some warm fuzzies about that if I'm working in the old Windows PowerShell, it kind of helps me know that, yeah, I'm still doing that kind of stuff in there. But what are some other kind of fancier things maybe you can do? Well, one of the nice things about, if I go into my settings here, is when you define your settings, and you can see a few here about color schemes, font faces, etc. One of the kind of nifty things you can do is whatever your command line is, you can set it to whatever you want. So you notice when these come up, I like really nice minimals. I don't really show my title or anything like that. I just like it to come up and be real clean. But you could customize the title to whatever you want. You can, and you notice like it doesn't show me the normal like PowerShell startup there. That's because I've set it up to do no logo, no exit. So you can get really fancy if you want. If you come down here to the SSH, you'll see here I'm actually running a PowerShell script. Let me blow that up a bit. So this is just kind of a simple command line PowerShell script, but it's, if you know PowerShell, this reads, whoops, not break that. Let me actually take this and copy it out to a PowerShell window. Make this PowerShell. Paste that in there. Format document. This might not have my preview one. Oh, it's because I got my semicolons. It's not going to break it out all nice. So let me just make it look nice. So that was a long string, but you read this and it's kind of pretty easy to see what happens. First, it's going to ask me for my username, save that to a variable, and then just start an SSH session. And then it's going to wait on that SSH session till I'm done SSHing. And when that window closes, it'll just give me a prompt that I can press any key to close, and then it'll wait for a key to be pressed, and then it'll close the terminal. So let's see what that looks like. Let me go ahead and go here to SSH, and there it is. So this is just a PowerShell script, but I'm kind of adding to my terminal a nice little extra I'm adding kind of my own command line programmer, my own shell. It's like, okay, I'm just going to do jgrote at tiny cloud, one of my nice little servers here. And so that started SSH. So now I'm in SSH, and I SSH in, and there I am. So here I am SSH'd into a box remotely, and it's right here seamless next to my local terminals, next to my Ubuntu terminals, etc. All this stuff in this nice, easy, seamless view on different tabs. One thing that, and you can rearrange the tabs, drag them around however you want. So this is really nice. Like if you're kind of a Linux guy, you've done this kind of stuff, you're used to your terminals like having this and you're like, big deal. But like if you're a Windows guy and you've always been kind of jailed into that terminal or you have like 10 windows open in different places, this is kind of a big deal. It's like having all these tools, having this kind of flexibility, being able to make your own tools that you go in. You can have, I have one here for PowerShell remoting where it's the same thing, but it'll actually do it through PowerShell remoting to get to a system. You could start a PowerShell remote terminal to a server and have that available to access it. And again, when we talk about Cloud Shell, I don't know my Cloud Shell work on my demo account. Yeah, I got to go in and do my whole rigmarole here. Put in my little demo guy here off screen, and just so you see what's happening, it's just doing a standard Azure login for me. And so I just completed it. Save my connection settings. And I logged in as my other test account. So, but this would normally come up with just a PowerShell thing, and you're able to do those kind of things. So we got all these tools. That's great. Let's go back to our demos. What's some other stuff we can do? All right, well, where do we go through these? Okay, well, so we saw kind of what those are. What are the default settings, though? So if you hit the down arrow here and you hold down the Alt key while you press settings, you'll get a different settings file, and you'll get what the Windows settings looks like by default. Now, this is in a special place. It's saved in program files. This file is just here. It's auto-generated, as they say here. No point in really changing this because it just deletes it every time it reloads. But if you want to know what the default settings look like, here they are. By default, it opens with 120 columns and 30 rows. Copy on select is enabled. Copy format is on. Copy formatting is a nice little trick. Say you're trying to show a coworker something and you want to copy paste what's in the terminal. If I open up a Word document here, here's kind of my nice little Word document. And so I've written some code. I've got this here. I kind of want to show them what's going on. Hey, this thing isn't working. I can't figure out what's going on. So you could paste like a wall of text. Actually, this would be better if I do. There we go. That's better. So I got like this wall of text, and you got your coworker. He's got to look at all your stuff, etc. Normally, you could like take this and copy and paste it into an email or something, and it end up looking like this. It's like, okay, well, that's and again, when we talk about context, kind of hard to figure out where things are and etc. And so, but what you can do here is that what it'll do is that it'll actually save the formatting. So when I copy that and I paste into a Word document or Outlook or something, it translates the HTML, and all the colors that I saw before are in my email, which I'll send to somebody. So that's really nice when you're sending it to a coworker or something, because they can immediately go to the red text and be like, oh, okay, I know what's going on there. Or say, you're putting up some markdown somewhere, or you're sending it an email. Makes much more visual indicators of the kind of code you're trying to represent. And so again, one of those little things is like, yeah, that's really nice, but man, it's a super nice to have when I have coworkers who are using Windows Terminal and they send me stuff and they copy paste it out versus somebody who's using the old terminal and copy and paste it out. Like, it's a big difference for me to be able to see exactly like where their issues are. I don't even have to I don't even have to take their code and put it back into VS Code so I can look at it. I can just reply back and be like, okay, I see what's going on there. Okay, so that's pretty neat. So where'd all these custom icons come from? Well, I got a little folder here. If I press 4, show my custom icons. So there's a special folder here where this is kept. And all this command is going to do is just open Explorer to that window. And here's my folder. And so I've just created a few icons here, used a couple tools to turn them into animated GIFs. You can do all that. And so the way that I got those in there, if I open the config, is just simply having those saved and pointing them to them. So with UWP apps, which is a new way of building Windows applications, there's this special URL syntax, MS App Data Roaming. So that maps this folder, but the nice thing about that is you don't have to point it to a specific folder. You just point it to this, and no matter where you send your theme or whatever computer you're on, you don't have to know the username or anything like that. It's all relative. So you can get this set up once and copy it over. So that's where my icons come from. Okay, back to the beginning here. So now let's go into some other things. So this is really nice that we have this JSON file that we can edit and we can change and we can update, and things happen immediately. But I don't really, I'm a PowerShell guy. I don't really want to constantly be editing JSON, testing that, doing that. I kind of want this to have kind of like a command line interface that would be nice to like add things and remove them. Well, a guy named Chris Duck came up with one a while ago when this was happening. He just kind of wrote a pretty simple PowerShell module called MS Terminal Settings. And I'm going to show that here. If I can pull up, helps if I don't put the disk on there. So here's the module. It exists as a GitHub repository. It's also out there on the PowerShell gallery. So this module gives you a nice command line interface to work with the Windows terminal. You got some standard stuff like get MS terminal profile, get MS terminal setting. So rather than have to edit the JSON directly, you can just type set MS terminal setting, etc., and do all that kind of stuff. Pretty neat module. So with Windows Terminal 1.0 coming out, a couple months ago, I was talking with Chris, and I was like, man, you know what? What's really nice is that they have this schema that defines all the settings and what they could do. So what if we made a module that just read that schema and dynamically generated PowerShell code in order to be able to manipulate Windows Terminal? That way, when like new stuff comes out, they add new features, they add new settings, the module will automatically update. We don't have to hand write it. So I went ahead and wrote one. And so there is a pre-release module out here that you will see here as this 2.1.0 that's available. That is this new version of a module. And I can go a bit into that after this meeting if you guys want to see some real deep dive on it. But it's a PowerShell module that reads the JSON schema. It uses this tool called QuickType, which will take a JSON schema in .NET and create .NET types out of the JSON schema, objects I can manipulate. And then from PowerShell, I can just work with those and generate dynamic parameters to work with that. So I now have a module that completely integrates that. So let me just do, for instance, get MS terminal profile. And there's all the profiles on my system as they are in my JSON file. And this format, I added a custom format to give it a nice little table format. You know, I can do get MS terminal color scheme, get a nice view for that. This might not be in my, this is not my demo profile. So debug preference. Just so you can kind of see what's happening behind the scenes here. I think it only shows on the saves. So you have these, now you have this nice command line interface to what happens with the JSON schema. But what's nice here is, like, for instance, if I want to take my current terminal profile, I can do get MS terminal profile, and hey, get MS terminal profile, which by default gets all the profiles, but I can do -current, and hey, look, it can automatically detect which profile I'm in. So that knows I'm in this PowerShell core one. If I go over here, if I don't include my little fancy caret at the beginning, hey, look, it knows I'm in PowerShell preview. Hey, that's pretty nice. That's pretty powerful. What are some stuff we can do with that? Well, let's go back to the demo script. So here's that script again, showing how I can detect my terminal profile. Just get MS terminal profile current. And there's the script running saying, there it is. Great. So what's something I can do? How about I change my terminal background color to red, just as a simple test. Say I'm doing something, I want it to warn me real quick. So this is all I got to do. I can get my current terminal profile and then just pipe that to set MS terminal profile and choose a background color. That's a pretty red one. Wait 5 seconds and then do it again. So let's see what happens. There we go. Change the red. Wait here about 5 seconds. And it'll change back. Let's see that again with the config open. And let's see, where's my PowerShell? It should be right about there. So let's try that again. Hey, look, see it automatically added in that background. In about 5 seconds, came right back out. And that's all that this module is doing. All it's doing is editing the JSON, saving it, editing it again, and saving it. But it's doing it with an object model that's really nice and allows like a lot of real strict type checking and error correction and dynamic help. So if I do like help, get MS terminal profile, every one of these parameters, you see you have this whole list of parameters, all these options, all this stuff you can set up. And every parameter has help. I didn't write any of this help. All of this comes right out of the JSON schema. So when this gets updated, as new things come out, as other things, they just show up in the module as new versions come out. And because these are all types, you'll notice some of these are like these kind of strange type names like close on exit union, background image stretch mode. Because it's able to pull the types from the schema, it pulls the validation out of the schema too. So if I do get MS terminal profile, now I want to get all profiles that have a background, or let me do background image opacity. I can hit tab here. Oh, that's a number. Background image alignment. And oh, I get all these auto-completed options. These all come right out of the JSON schema. If you read the JSON schema, it says these are the only allowed defined types. So I don't have any profiles that have the background image bottom right, but that doesn't work. Let me try bottom right F. See, automatically knows that nope, you can't do that. So that's a really nice thing with PowerShell module building is if you have a JSON schema or something like that, you can do some fancy stuff to have it automatically basically do code generation. This is basically like how the Azure modules are built. They basically just use the schema that comes from the REST API and dynamically generate the PowerShell module with a little extra secret sauce to make it a little bit more PowerShelly.
So Justin, I'm gonna stop a second, and
Sure.
this module here is on the gallery as well.
This module's on the gallery. This particular version that uses all the dynamic schemas in pre-release right now. So yeah, if you want to install it, you just do install module MS terminal settings - pre-release. If you don't do the pre-release, you get the 1.0 version of the module that just kind of manually edits the JSON. But yeah, so recommend the pre-release module. Feel free to play around, test with it. And all my demos from this point on are going to kind of use this module. But all they're doing in the background is manipulating that JSON. And so yeah, if you want to install it.
So this stuff is like, I love this stuff. I think you're doing an awesome job. And I think there's so much great stuff that's coming through here. What I actually want to do is pause for a second here while you're getting yourself set up. There's been some pretty good chatter in the chat, not specific questions per se, but like, oh, that's cool, this, that kind of stuff. I just want to give people a chance here to level set. Justin's covered a lot of stuff. Does anybody have any questions they want to hit him with, or is something that he went by that he just kind of glazed through quick that you didn't catch, and we want to make sure everybody's on the same page? So if anybody's got questions, this should be a great little pause here if you want to jump in and ask anything, or else he's just going to keep trucking on with more great stuff.
Hey, Justin,
All
I
right.
got one.
Sure.
When you, just a second ago, when you were listing out all the available inputs to that switch for bottom right, all of that, how did you see the whole list of them?
So that's a built-in thing in PS readline. If you do, this works with anything that has any kind of like enum auto completion. If I do, let me do back to that. So this is just a type. And so to do this, typically you're used to this hitting tab to get this. To get it for the full list, you can hit control space, and that gets you sort of the all possible options. This is a PS readline thing. If you do PS readline option, there's info about that, and you can do get PS readline key handlers, and you can rebind that to whatever you want. So this is PS readline key handlers. There's control spacebar here for menu complete, and so you can change it to whatever you want. There's also a different mode in the PS readline options called Emacs mode. If you're not familiar with what Emacs is, it's a text editor on Linux. But basically, like if you're used to using Emacs, it will automatically set all that stuff up for that type of mode based on that config setting, which I'm trying to remember where it is. It's in here. Edit mode, here we go. So edit mode default is Windows, but you do Emacs. But in short, control space. If there's all kinds of stuff, if there's anything I want to show you here real quick, type this command into your personal console. And this is all kinds of fancy stuff you probably didn't know you could do. And this is not specific to Windows Terminal. This is specific to anywhere you run PowerShell. So accept line, add line. These are all these keyboard shortcuts that are built in. And all you got to do if you want to change them is just change them in your profile. So if you weren't aware of this, it's really nice. So a couple of my keyboard shortcuts are like for the autocomplete here of the thing.
So the two tips there was control space showed you all of the parameters that are available, and then PS readline key handler is how we got to this sort of settings file of all the shortcuts, right?
Right. So control space is how I got it, and then get PS readline key handler. Of course, you can put that in outgrid view if you want. and get a nicer view here. Sort, filter. I want to see what does kill. And then if you want to rebind these, it's just set PS readline handler. But this is a different module called PS readline. It's built into every PowerShell basically these days since 5.1 onwards. And so you already have this module. You don't have to download it. And it's what provides a lot of the kind of functionality that you get as far as like the syntax handling and all that kind of stuff. So it's a nice complement. We'll talk a little bit more about that when I get to the next part of some of the theming stuff you can do.
Cool. Thank you.
Yep.
You got a question?
Sure.
How do you keep your settings synchronized between different machines?
So there's no built-in support with Windows Terminal, but because again, it's just this settings JSON file, you can do whatever you want. So what I do personally is I actually go in and I symlink it to my OneDrive. And so that way, whenever I make changes to it, I'm actually making changes to my OneDrive file, and then that gets synced upwards. And then I go to my other computer, and as soon as I open Windows Terminal, all my settings are there. I had another script. Let me pull up my GIST. I had a GIST too for basically like uploading and downloading like pre-built themes. Go ahead.
Do you have for those people who aren't familiar with symlinks, you just quickly talk about that. I'm familiar.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I apologize. So symlink or an NTFS junction, it's basically a way to like point at a file without without having to copy it and paste it back and forth. I'll show a simple example here. Let me open Explorer. So here I got this. Here on my desktop, I got a couple files here. So I'm going to go to my desktop. And so here's like this settings.json, which is my thing. But maybe I want to make it that I want to back it up somewhere. Say I just want to back it up to my desktop. But what I want to do is I want to have it in a way that when I change it, it gets changed wherever that extra place is. So a way to do this is to create either an NTFS junction or a symbolic link. Symbolic links require admin rights. Junctions don't. Don't worry too much about that distinction right now. I'm just going to go ahead and start a new admin terminal to show a symbolic link, because that's kind of, if you've been using Linux and stuff, what you're used to. And yes, you can do symbolic links on Windows. Hot admin terminal here. I'll just do it in an old PowerShell prompt for old timey sake. So PowerShell has this command, new item, which you're probably familiar with. And you can see it one time when I was symlinking something for something I was developing. Thank you, autocomplete. So we'll do an item type of symbolic link as opposed to like a file or a directory or something like that. And the way that this works is first I point to the path of what is the file that I want to do. So I'm going to do, my backup.ps1 or my backup.json. And my target is going to be that file that I want. I want it to be a relative one, so I'm going to let it do that. I'm going to do settings, hit tab there to autocomplete it. Tab, come on, tab. Where are you? Oh, you know what? I think it has a different name in here. Oh, I know why. It's because I actually started my admin. This is under my normal user, I bet. Yeah, it is. Okay, let me do a different example then. Let's do the CLI XML test.json I got there. Okay, so let me take this again. Target test.json. Okay, so just like that, now I have this symbolic link. And so if I open my Explorer and go to it, you'll see this thing, and you'll see now I have this my backup, and it's the same icon and everything, but you'll notice it's got this little shortcut on it, and it says .symlink over here. So a symlink is basically like a shortcut on steroids. Unlike a shortcut, which is a file that you execute it and all that kind of stuff, a symlink appears to your system like it is the file that it's pointing to. So if I do a git content mybackup.json, it doesn't tell me, oh, that's a shortcut, you can't do anything. It actually grabbed the content of that file. And so it allows you to work with a file in a different location while still making sure that all the changes go back to that original location. So what I was talking about was basically if you do that whole symlink thing, but you put it on OneDrive, OneDrive now thinks there's a file there. And so, and yes, sorry, I see in the chat somebody said this is a new version of MakeLink. Yeah, if you're familiar with MakeLink /D to create links, you can now do that in PowerShell with the new -item command. And so, but make links another way to do the same thing. And so you can basically put a shortcut on here, and then OneDrive will see it. It'll see it when you change the file, because OneDrive sees it as a file to say, oh, you updated your terminal settings, and it'll upload it. And then I just do the same thing on the other side, and you get this sort of poor man's synchronization. But you can use any synchronization tool you want to do that kind of thing. If you have a third-party tool, if you want to write a PowerShell script that uploads it to a GitHub GIST and then downloads it from that GitHub GIST, sort of like how VS Code syncs your settings, you can do that. But this nice thing is because there's no special API or no special commands you got to run. It's just a JSON file. And you just copy that JSON file from one computer to the other, however you want to do it. So you can use whatever sync tool you want to use.
All right, cool. Let's get back on topic.
Wonderful.
All right. So moving on, let's clear things up here again. Go back to my test script here. So what are some other things we can do? Okay, we saw changing the background color. What's something else we can do? Well, let's try changing the light theme. So this one is set MS terminal setting. And notice I didn't have to specify which terminal I'm working with. This is the feature of the new 2.0 one, is this automatic terminal detection, is that it's just going to know that I'm running this command from inside this PowerShell. If I was running it from a different window, that command is not going to work. I actually have to do get the profile to then change it. But it's just kind of nice. I can just do this, and it'll implicitly know that it's this terminal that I want to do. It's just going to assume I wanted to do it to this terminal. So it's going to change the theme to the light theme, because in Windows 10, there's automatic dark and light themes. And then it's just going to change it back to the default, which my default theme is dark. So let's run this. And look, oh, look, it's the light theme. Got all my light theme stuff. It's all nice like that. Give it about 5 seconds. Oh, change back. And again, all it did was change the JSON, change it back, but it did it through this like really nice object model. If I do get MS terminal profile, MS terminal profile. And again, all the filtering and stuff is built in automatic. It's all dynamically generated. I didn't write any direct code for any of this. So say I want to get my hidden profiles, which I don't have any, but do a better example. How about source?
What's a hidden profile?
A hidden profile is basically if you set a profile to hidden, you still have the configuration, but it doesn't show up in this list. I'll show a demo of that here in a bit. In fact, I can show one right now. So, okay, so here's all my terminal profiles that have WSL. So because I built pipelining and all this, we'll see if this works or it'll blow up in my face. Oops. Let's just turn off the debug for now. Set MS terminal profile dash hidden. And now all those profiles that I had for those WSL ones are now gone. Turn it back. These are also, my code turns Booleans into switches. So you can just do hidden instead of hidden : true or hidden : false. But here I'm going to do hidden. Want it unhidden. Oops, ran the same command again. And look, they're back.
What's the use case for that? Why would you want to do that?
There's a couple reasons. If you're developing things, you can work on them. If you switch between contexts, like I'd have a couple different profiles where I have like a work profile and a demo profile and that kind of thing. Typically, you could just use different profiles, load and remove them. But if you're kind of working dynamically, one thing you could do is like say you want to have a profile in your configuration, but you want to have a PowerShell profile or a startup script that only shows it if it's installed. Like for instance, I might not have WSL installed. Now in this case, Windows Terminal auto detects it. But let's say you had a terminal open that brings you up your SQL Server commands and your SQL Server tools, or you have a command that every time you open Windows Terminal, you want it to automatically SSH to your domain controller, so you have that, or Windows Remote to your domain controller. But you only want it to do that if you're on the domain. You could have a script that says, if I'm not on the domain, don't show me that thing. But if I'm on the domain, show me all these extra options. So contextual stuff like that would be an example. It's mostly there, I'd say, primarily. I'm just spitballing here, but it's mostly there for when you're doing configs to like hide it, test, just to get it out of the way while you're testing. That's primarily what I use it for.
Cool.
It also sounds like you have some situations to deal with that maybe some of us don't. Being an MSP, you're jumping between a lot of different environments.
Yeah, if you look at, we use Azure provides us a nice tool like Lighthouse, but there's other products. Odie, a quick answer to your question. If you use the latest version of Windows PS Readline, some of you may have noticed that this has gone away. like you don't get this sort of nice fish style auto completion, that's because it was moved to a preference. So if you do get PS readline option, there is a preference here for auto completion, and I forgot the name of it, but it's in here somewhere. It's new, but basically you set that. Actually, I'll tell you what. Let me just go to my profile. No, I think my profile has some stuff in there I shouldn't show. So, but basically,
I think it's
no, it's not tooltips. I think it's something else. I'll tell you, it'll be faster for me to just Google the article on it. But basically, if you're running like the very, very latest version of PowerShell, they took that out, but you just have to set an option in your profile to make it show up. Actually, I'll tell you what, I can just pull it up off screen. I'll tell you, let me put a pin in that, and I'll come back to it at the end of the presentation. But yeah, it's just an option that you set now. It's built into the newest version of PS Readline. You can take that PS Readline and put it on your old version of PowerShell. You need one of the beta versions. GML PS Readline. It is. Oh, sorry, this is my custom built one, so that's a bad example. But I think it's like pre-release 2.0. It's the one that comes with PowerShell 7, and you just have to do a set PS readline option. Let's see if I can just pick
prediction source.
I think that's it. Yeah, by default, prediction source is none. Yeah, this is my custom built one, so it's older than the latest one. But yeah, so yeah, that is it. It's prediction source. So if you type this in your PowerShell 7 right now, you should get this auto prediction. And so basically, it's very simple right now. It just auto predicts what you've previously typed. But there is a thread if you're interested. I'll bring that up here right now. There's a thread on GitHub that they're going to do a thing called predictive IntelliSense, which does a lot of the cool stuff of like reading your parameters, reading what you've done, using machine learning to guess like the most common Azure parameters that people use. And this is sort of that proposal. It's a PowerShell RFC. And so if you want to get in on this discussion about what you want to see, what it should do, how the menu completion should work, this is where you want to go. So it's this guy. I'll put it in the chat. If you want to know more about that and really get involved, this is where the magic's being happened. This is where it's being discussed, and you can help shape the future of PowerShell by joining this discussion. Okay, so back here, bring up the old demo script and see what else I got pre-built. Okay, great. So we did that. We had that. We showed changing the terminal. Let's try changing the font. So you do demos from time to time, like I do. You know, maybe I want to blow up my font like this, but maybe I want to have a script that does it. This is what it looks like. First, I think, hey, warning, it's going to blow. Wait a couple seconds, and then set terminal to font size 20. And this is my module. It just goes into the JSON, goes to that profile, and just changes the font size to 20 and saves the JSON. Sleeps 5 minutes and then changes it back. So here we go. Wait 2 seconds, and kaboom, there it goes. Wait 5 seconds. And we're back. So just another example of just little things you can change, kind of inspirations, things you can do here, there, everywhere. So, okay, great. We got these. I don't really want to go through all the trouble to like get my color schemes and everything right, though. Like I kind of like some of the ones that are there. Well, thankfully, there's some built-in ones. So by default, and this might show more than the initial. Actually, let me just restore my custom profile again, just so we undo anything I may have done here. We go back to normal. And so let's cycle through what some of the default color schemes are built in. So what this script does, it first displays this tool called Color Tool, which basically gives you a nice little tool that shows you all the colors of your terminal in terms of like if you were to do right host, green, dark green, yellow, dark yellow, just gives you a nice little display that shows you what those colors look like in the terminal. Then I'm going to set the background and foreground to neutral so that the profile can inherit it. And then I'm going to just cycle through each of the default ones that are built in. So first I'm just going to do get MS terminal color scheme, which by default just gets all the color schemes that are in your config. And you can see those here in the config. Usually they're way down at the bottom. And they're pretty simple. They're just, you got a name and then what you want the different colors to be. And these line up to the typical Windows terminal colors. So these are my custom ones. And if you open the defaults, you can see the default ones right here. So you got solarized, vintage, PowerShell, Campbell is the default. And so let's do that and see what happens. So we'll wait 5 seconds. And so now we're on color scheme Campbell PowerShell, vintage, 1/2 dark, 1/2 light, solarized dark, solarized light. So those are all the built-in themes. And so with just one command, you can completely change your theme and be there. You don't have to learn how to code this. You don't have to do that. You can just try one of those themes. Okay, so then the next thing is what my coworkers would say, well, I don't like any of the built-in themes. They're all ugly. All right, well, one of the things we built into this module was the ability to import iTerm themes, because iTerm themes, if you're not familiar with them, is a simple theme to open items that are, it's theming for Linux. It's sort of a standard theme for Linux. And there's this repository that has over 200 of them. So we just made a thing because those configs follow a standard format. We just convert them to the PowerShell format and import them. So let's see what that looks like. So I downloaded the GitHub repository for this, which is just right here. And in that folder is this schemes, which I will go ahead and show you real quick. And it's just a folder, a bunch of these iTerm colors files. And so you just run my module command, which imports them, does that same color tool thing. And this time we're going to start iterating through those things. And we're just pretty much just going to iterate through them pretty much as fast as we can. So it's going to get that list of files, and for each of those files, it's going to import the scheme so that it's now part of my config, and then it writes progress just to show us which config we're on, and then sets that color scheme, which just by taking that name, and because it's been added to the config, it's setting the color scheme to the profile. And in fact, I can probably show that live as it does it, so you can see what that looks like. And again, all it's doing is editing this file, so VS Code will see it when it changes and just show. So we're in the PowerShell one, which should be right here. So you should see it just start. All it's going to do is it's just going to add a line here, the color scheme, the name of the scheme, and save it. It's going to go faster than this thing can handle, but you'll see it. Oh, I did it too fast. I knew that was going to happen. Yep, super broke it. I knew I would do that. So here's how we fix that. So there's a little thing in this config where if I run changes too fast, one change overwrites the other. But this is the nice thing about PowerShells. The Windows terminal is here's my screwed up config, which probably got bumped. And my computer is really slow for some reason all of a sudden. So we just take our settings JSON, take it all, blow it away, save it, and we're back to normal. So I can run my little again here. Restore my personal customizations. And I think I normally run this script without my personal customizations, so that might be why. There it goes. Yep, changed it too fast again. So we'll blow that away. But this is really, it's really nice that they make it so that it just picks up when you change it and immediately brings it into the window. You don't have to close and reopen it all the time to test these things. So let's change my script a little bit and just add a little bit of sleep there, which I used to have there, but my computer's slowing down to the point that that is running into a problem. And where are you? So we're just going to go to this little demo here for that loop. And just stick a nice little sleep. Doesn't need much, just 0.3, about 300 milliseconds. That should do it. And let's try that again. Oh, and see, that's the nice thing about this little demo script is that it puts all the fancy stuff up top. But when you make your demos, they're pretty simple. You just say what you want the demo to be and then what your code is. And then my script just goes through and does all the other scaffolding, builds the menus, does all that kind of stuff. So it's really nice for quick demos. I'll put up some information about that at the end too. So there, that'll run a little bit slower, but it shouldn't trip over itself now. So if you complain that there aren't enough themes and you don't have them, here's the answer to that. Here's 200 different themes right out of the box. And if this is still not enough for you, then you can go in and change the numbers yourself. Like I'm going to go ahead and just like interrupt this. And so now it's stuck on this one. And so we'll go back to my settings and you'll see here, it is on theme Calamity. And so it actually I set this one up. I didn't point it to a particular profile. So you see it set it to my default. So if you go to every profile is actually now this color scheme. Because there's the way that this config works is you can set defaults at the top level, and then those will carry through to all your profiles. It's an easy way to kind of deduplicate and cut out a bunch of the out of the extras. So you don't have to like cut and paste your settings into every single config. You can just set them once at the top, and then the individual ones are just what you want to be different for those individual settings. So let's go find that scheme here. You can see all these schemes got added in, but if I find Calamity, there it is. I don't know, let's change, what's my background? Here it is. Let's make this AAFFDD. As soon as I hit save, there it is. Sorry for the blackout, but so you can go through and here and change it, get it how you want it, change your colors as you need. I'm working on a thing to be able to import a typical VS Code theme in and vice versa, but most of those are covered by the iTerm themes. So I'll get back to my example here. Oh my God, this is ugly. Oh my God, it's disgusting. You might notice a couple of the icons look a little weird. I'll go into why that is here in a minute. Bring my config up. Completely unreadable. Factory reset. Blow it away. Let's try that again. So they made it very developer friendly for this kind of stuff where you can just blow it away, try again, change things here, change things there, make them how you like it. Here I am back to my default settings. Restore my personal favorite settings. And one thing I don't think I showed here, I don't think it shows in my restore. But again, because it's just a JSON file, like if you have a GIST, if you want to restore, you can do, an invoke web request to pull the file down to that location. And that's how you can see it. You could have that be in your PowerShell profile every day, so that when you start it up, it just pulls down from the GIST. And that way, every computer you're on that has that profile just gets your settings. This is another quick way of syncing settings that I used to do. So pull down my settings, and all it's doing is just copying the one I got on my desktop to here. The only thing it's doing to get all those settings back. All right, so let's look at something else. A really nice thing about the new Windows terminal is they've integrated a lot of modern stuff. I'm going to show a thing for this new thing called conpty, which if you really want to go in the weeds, if you want to learn how PowerShell works, they added this thing called the pseudo console, which basically just makes it so that Windows makes it much easier for developers to do the kind of cool stuff like Linux developers do in terms of being able to interact with the console, do those cool kind of menu-driven interfaces, all that kind of neat stuff. This article goes through what that is. So if you really want to deep dive on that, I'll paste that here into the chat. But really, all you really kind of need to know is just to see here that in the past, it was all kind of very strict, and now there is this nice new emulated console with all these kind of layers in between. And you don't see any of this, but it allows some nifty stuff to happen, some nifty development to happen. So one of those nifty things that you can do is get 24-bit color. This demo may not work. I can't remember if I've updated it, but all this does basically get some colors, does some fancy stuff to get the colors, and then outputs them. And if it works, there we go. So this just picks basically random colors out of the 16 million that are available. And this just gives you an idea. You're not just restricted to those colors that I showed in the terminal. You can output multiple different colors of any combination that you want. And so this gives you, if you want to build some console applications, if you want to have some colors, you want to output images, you can do all that kind of fancy stuff with this now because it supports 24-bit color. You're not just limited to the 8 colors you used to in the old terminal. But I think if I run this command on the old terminal, it just goes completely haywire. But there's another thing too. One thing you're seeing is that you probably noticed my font's kind of neat, and you probably noticed some things happen when I've been typing. If I do like this, maybe do not equals, it kind of converts it to this special symbol, or I do equals, or I do a double, a triple dash, or what is it? Triple slash, how they kind of get collated there. If I do a triple equals, it gets kind of a special thing. These are things called ligatures. If you do a lot of programming, you might like these. They're kind of handy. But the font that I'm using here is a font called Cascadia Code, which was developed in conjunction with Windows Terminal, designed to be a very easy to read font. And one thing here that comes with this is a bunch of power line icons and things that allows you to do these kind of cool characters where you get my kind of cool prompt, which any of you have been staring at my prompt and being like, how does he get that prompt? And how does it, when he goes to projects, why does it do this cool thing? Oh, wow, why does it do that cool thing? And oh, why does this come up? I'll talk about that in just a little bit. But in short, This is not possible without this fancy kind of font. And so I'll show that basically off and on. So this is a ligatures demo. And these are all the available ligatures. These are just characters that when you type them, and they don't change, like it doesn't change them to a new character, it just displays them differently. And so this can be really helpful once you get used to them to know, like, you know, it's really helpful to see like a not equals look that way as opposed to the exclamation mark equals. Some people like them, some people don't. You can turn them on, you can turn them off. I'm just going to show how to turn them off. All I'm going to do is sleep. I'm going to change the font back to the default Consolis, and then I'm just going to change the font back. So when I do that, 5 seconds. Now watch the characters closely. I'll blow it up a bit. See, now they've changed back to the Consolis. And now we're back to my regular font. This is a little thing. If you see those characters, they're called ligatures. They're really nice. They're useful in both VS Code and that. And the font I used here is a font called Cascadia Code. There's a special version called Cascadia Code with a K that includes a bunch of extra characters that I use for my prompts. Cascadia Cove, excuse me. And so I'll show the page for that. So this URL here, you'll see they rename it for copyright reasons, but this font is the same Cascadia Code, but includes a lot of extra characters, all these nerd font characters that you can use for prompts, use for status updates, use for things like pester, etc. I'll just bring up a page here that will kind of give you an idea of what that looks like. If I didn't click the same thing twice. Nerdfonts.com. And basically, these are sort of like emojis, like you might be used to, but they're actually font characters. And so they take all these font characters and they integrate them into the font. And so it allows you to do all these kind of cool terminals and this kind of stuff. Again, if you're familiar with Linux, they do a lot of this kind of stuff to make all these wild prompts and that kind of stuff, but it's just an easy thing to get. But all you gotta do is download this font, install it, and you're good. Oh, let me put that into the chat for people who might want it.
Yeah, definitely want it.
Okay, so we've gone through the ligatures. So what's some other stuff we can do? Well, how about we just let's really start abusing the stuff that we can do with the terminal. So you see here in the bottom right, I have this animated GIF, you know, and it's just a GIF that's playing, just playing on a loop, and I told it to go on the bottom right. So what are some of the kind of nifty things we can do, like knowing that we can do that kind of a thing? Well, one thing we could do is like, well, what if we combine, because PowerShell is a great glue code. So here's a great example. Well, PowerShell, I know now I can set this document. I also know that I can use PowerShell to go fetch any GIF I want using invoke web request. I also know that Giphy is a repository of requests. I also know that Giphy has an API to get GIF URLs to download. Well, what if I glue all that stuff together? Well, first, we're going to quick run a script that I have here, which you'll see when my warning comes up. Never run code from the internet you haven't reviewed. If you trust me, fine. That's your risk. If you don't trust me, and you shouldn't, just open this guy. And it'll open up the gist that is this code. Review it, make sure I haven't done anything that deletes your hard drive or steals your keys or anything like that before you run it. And then it will. This basically just adds a function called search Giphy, which is a function that I wrote that just works with the API and makes like a really simple interface to do things like filter by, I want GIFs that have the word excited in them. I want the first 3. I want cute flying bat, and I want to turn the weirdness factor up. You know, this is all stuff that's part of their API. And if you get into the code of this, all it's doing is just doing an invoke web request against the thing using their API stuff and then parsing the results. So what this is going to do is it's going to run this, going to search for a picture of a cute bat, and then get the direct URL, take that, get a random picture, and then it'll say the URL that it's going to do, and then it will simply run this command I have called invoke MS terminal GIF, which comes with the MS terminal settings. That what it's going to do is it's going to start a new PowerShell process in the background, basically do it asynchronously so it doesn't interrupt my terminal, and then go into the config and stick that line in there, and then take it back out after 5 seconds. So yes, I will comply. This will either work or it'll break. Looks like we got a cute cat instead of a cute bat. Sometimes it's not the biggest API. Let's try that again. Yeah, I think for some reason it's doing cute, apparently cute bats are cute bats on Imgur. So, or Giphy, excuse me. Well, let's do this a little bit differently then. Search Giphy. If you just run this by default, I actually need to import the command. Let me grab So I was importing the command into the scope of this script. So let me just grab my command from the internet. If you haven't seen this kind of format, this is just kind of a nifty way to, IWR is a shorthand way of saying invoke web request, get the raw content of this file, and then execute it. It's a way that I use, and then the get.io, there's a link shortener you can use for get. It's a way that I like to basically, like, if I have a one-off command that I use on occasion, I'll do this, or like a setup script, I'll do this so I can just run it from anywhere. And now I have this command in my scope. If I do help, search, Giphy, you can see all the help about it and what the parameters do and all that good stuff. But it's all just right there in the code. If you take out the IEX part of this, you'll get the web request, and it implicitly translates to a string. That's why I didn't have to do anything there. But if I put string in front of this or do outstring or whatever, you'll see the code for the command. And it's just a standard function, some comment-based help in there, and the parameters. So that little sideshow aside, and I have my search Giphy back. I think by default, this just grabs the top 5 random GIFs. Here it grabs the top random GIF. So I'm going to take that. Let's see what this click GIF from the BBC is. I'm going to do it on, because I'm a coward, I'm going to do it on my local computer to make sure it's not anything I don't want to show. Oops, that's the source. That's where it came from. I want the URL. That looks fun. Let's do that. So I do search Giphy, direct URI. Nope. Lose my search. You're still there. Direct URL. Fine, be that way. All right, let's take this guy, see what he is. Yeah, works for me. $F, invoke terminal GIF. Oh, MS terminal GIF. Sorry, I forgot I renamed it as a result of. It does some kind of intelligent stretching, but let's do full. Uniform to fill. Fill. There we go. So that's fun. One thing that's kind of nice about this, I don't know if I have it in this demo. Probably not. Yeah, not. So I have in my profile a simple thing that when you throw oops, it sets an atom bomb off on the desktop using the invoke terminal GIF. So kind of a fun thing, but also kind of useful. If I run a build script and the build script completes, it's a little kid cheering yay, so helps you keep sanity when you're working at home by yourself and you haven't seen anybody in like 3 days.
So can we just stop there a second again? Sure. Somebody kind of question. I just want to make sure that people did see it and then other people saw it. Is that what you kind of did right there? Is you dot source the function that you wrote that was stored in GitHub, then you did it, and then you just ran it right from there, right?
Right.
So, yeah.
Step back and I'll step through that real quick since we don't have a time limit and I'm not shooting for my hour. We'll go ahead and do some. We'll go to the side. So I got a gist here, gist.github.com/JustinGrote. And there's this amazing extension called GistPad for VS Code that basically lets you work with gists like they're local files. So there's a lot of neat stuff out here. If you want to see all kinds of stuff from anything I make that I'm just like, this is kind of neat, I put out here. So there's all kind of nifty stuff here. But this particular one, I think it is named, see if I can find it. I don't think, I won't search my local ones here. I think it's not too far down here, I can find it.
It's just a pretty interesting, way in which you're, storing your code into like a public repository so you can access it from anywhere.
It's
So it's kind of an
basically
interesting model for that.
it's basically me being really lazy is what it is. And so like I don't want to copy the code, I don't want to paste it, I don't want to test it. I want to just run, I want to get that function back from anywhere I have a well, I'll just grab any random thing here. Let's do update module fast as an example.
I think it's more than just being, lazy at this point. Is that, hey, here's this place in which you can store some code that is publicly accessible to anywhere in the world, and say any machine just reach out to the web and grab that file no matter where you are.
And you can make these private. Like you can make GIS secrets so that they don't show up in search results or anything. You have to have sort of like the special URL that you see up here, like you normally do. Like you would have for like a Teams meeting. It's sort of like the code. So that way you can have code out there that you can run anywhere from the internet, but you basically need the quote unquote password to get to it because it's unlisted. It's only for you.
I think it's unlisted, but it's still anybody who guesses it can guess it right.
Anybody who guesses it, but good luck guessing this. Yeah, have fun and not running up against the rate limits.
Yeah.
So what you do is you have your GIST, you edit it, you do that. And if you don't know what GISTs are actually, each one of these is its own individual Git repository. Like I can check this out in Git and manage it and version control it and do all that stuff. It's just basically a super mini repository for, actually I can probably just take the raw off this, I forgot. That's the easy way to get to it. Yeah, here it is. Okay, so here's search Giphy, give it a description. You can see I have 207 revisions, but this is not me going git commit, git push, any of that kind of stuff. This is using GitPad, and basically every time I hit save, it saves a new revision. But I can go back to any one of these revisions and get that version of the code. So here it is. And so what's neat about this is that to get that special URL I had, you have this where you go to the site, and then you just click this raw. And then this will give you this URL. This is what you feed into invoke web request. So if I bring up invoke web request again, pull this up a bit. So, and this is just a link shortened to that. If you look in my GIST, the link shortener to make new links is just like new git.io link, and you just put in the link in the short name and it'll build one for you. Let me do that. And so this is a way to like take a string and run it as a PowerShell script. So all I'm doing is then I'm also then grabbing that string from somewhere else using IWR invoke web request. And I'm implicitly converting it to a string because invoke expression takes a string. So if you were to do the full command, it'd be invoke expression, like the way that dash command, invoke dash web request dash URI, this guy. And if you really wanted to be, pipe it into out string or cast it to a string, if you want to be really like explicit about it. Excuse me. Oh, I forgot to put in quotes. And so that's how you run it remotely. Excuse me.
Super interesting.
So it's just taking like 4 or 5 different concepts and using PowerShell to glue them together to have this really easy way to sort of quickly import a command. So here's the raw file. This is the specific revision. So if you always want to just get the latest revision, you just take this number off of here. And then if you do this link, and this is what my git.io link points to, it is that even whenever I change it, this link never changes. This always points to the latest version of the file. So if I change it, if I give you a new version and you're still using my old thing, you get my new version with the new things. But if you want to pin your code so that like you don't want my changes to break your thing, it works, you can use the specific URL. This is the git commit to actually just do that one file and have it just do that one file per time in a memoriam. So that example, take it here, shrink this down a bit. And this was just a lot of experimentation I had, sort of like, you've seen those like code golf things, like how small can you get commands? This is basically like me code golfing it till I got it down to what I have. And you can actually see an example of this in installing PowerShell. If you go to install PowerShell. Chocolatey does the same trick too. Where is the GitHub releases page? I used to have a nice article that showed the installer. Where is it? I don't know. It's in here somewhere. These are all the wget ways. I think dotnet uses an example of it too. Yeah, here we go. So this is the same one where you can install .NET, just do IWR that, pipe it into IEX, and that installs .NET, just like that. I know Scoop does for sure. So the Scoop installer, see there's that nice little short thing. Here's sort of the long version. This is a version that's PowerShell like 4, PowerShell 3 compatible. This version's, you can take the USB off if you're PowerShell 5.1 or newer. If you do it in PowerShell 4, this is basically says use basic parsing, which basically says don't use Internet Explorer to parse the thing. But here's another example of it in the wild. There you go. Yeah, Rob pulled it up there. So the AKMS install PowerShell. So you just, and it's in the examples. He has it in the chat there. And so you can just do IW that, pipe it into IEX, and then it's got some options like you do it with preview, use MSI, and you can install PowerShell that fast. So it's a nice way to just basically run code off the internet like you're not supposed to do. It's basically the equivalent of double-clicking an unsigned exe. But again, if you know how to go to it, you know how to trust it, etc., then it can be okay. But don't do that. Don't tell anybody I told you to do it. You always run all you guys always run in all signed mode, and every script you run is downloaded and signed, right? Right, everybody? That's what you do? Keep security guys happy? Yeah, me too.
Yes, dear.
Yes, dear. Okay, so we've kind of gone through sort of the examples, but that gives you some ideas of the different things you can do. And so the MS Terminal Settings module, just basically, like I said, all it does is front end that JSON file. It just does it in a really fancy way that makes everything really structured. So command terminal profile, GV. Get a nice view of those commands. And the the name of the module, MS Terminal Settings, just comes from back when Chris started the module. I've been thinking of renaming it to just Windows Terminal or, WinTerm or WT Settings or something. But for now, it's still here. But these are sort of the different commands that are available. And they kind of they seem kind of a very small command set, but they're very broad commands. So if you do help, get MS Terminal Profile. And the help is not complete due to a bug with how Platypus works, but all the different parameters are here and how to set them up and the examples and everything. So everything's pipelinable, all that good stuff. This is a kind of a fun thing. If you didn't know, you can use colors in PowerShell type files. So with a type file, you can format a file based on its colors. And so basically all this is injecting an ANSI color. So this is just a PowerShell type file. Set a type format on it. Like if I take these things and I do it, I haven't set a list view for it. So it's just sort of normal with, excuse me, I haven't set a table view for it. So you have to use normal. But this list view is actually just one of those XML PowerShell formatter files that says, runs a script and tells it to do these different colors. So each one of these colors is the color it represents. So just some nice stuff if you're like building a PowerShell module and you want the objects to come back. It's a very specific kind of object that comes back, this Windows Terminal.SchemeList object. It's a full object. It's a C# object. And but the formatting just comes from one of those PowerShell type formatting files. The same thing with if you get MS Terminal Profile. Normally, if you have a thing by default, this is what you would see. And this is a little hard to read and parse and that kind of stuff. So I just made a format that the default formatting puts it in a nice table format and gives you like the most important things you would care about. Your unique identifiers, what's the command line for it, where did it come from, is it hidden? And this all works with all the same stuff you would expect. Select first one. And you can pipe that in a format list or OGV. Out grid view and see all the details of it.
So one of the other things, Justin, that has been asked before, do you know if they've made any progress with launching Windows Terminal as admin, in a different, kind of thing?
The most common request is having a separate tab here that would be an admin thing versus having to open Windows Terminal completely separate as a separate process. So the short answer on that is that you guys need to take a time machine, go back to Windows Vista, and slap the design sheet out of their hand, because a design change that was made in Windows Vista, everybody remember UAC, the UAC prompts everywhere, these guys that pop up all the time? That was a design change that happened in Windows Vista. And what it basically did was it made it so that no process that starts in a non-admin context can create a process in an admin context. It's impossible to do in the very internals of Windows for security reasons. And that's why so much stuff in Vista broke, is because programs just assumed they were going to run as admin. And Windows 7 wasn't much different than Vista, other than it just fixed those problems. But that fundamental change had to happen to really increase the security of Windows applications. So that's a long way of saying no, they haven't, because it's a fundamental barrier in Windows that would require a fundamental OS change in Windows to fix. There are some programs, like there's like pseudo scripts and things that exist for PowerShell. But what those basically do is those will run as a service and use the service which runs as admin to then start the admin thing and then connect to the process in a really roundabout way, where it's not really a child process. And those can kind of emulate it, where you can do a sudo and it'll actually run as admin. But it's really going this completely roundabout way that you had to have admin set up through a service installed previously to begin with. So in short, no. But typically what I do is that I just, if I have one, if you're not aware of this keyboard shortcut, if you have Windows Terminal in your taskbar or something, you can just hit Control Shift and click it, and that will immediately open it as admin. So I got to log into my admin guy here because it's not on my demo account. And that'll open a second terminal that's in admin. What I do is my Windows profiles are set that it'll do an admin detection. If I'm running it as admin, it will change this background to red, or a special red background, so I know that terminal is my admin terminal. So that's the workaround that I recommend. You can do it if you do like the start menu and just type WT to bring up Windows Terminal. You can hit Control Shift Enter there too to have it jump right into admin versus not. So like it's an extra step, sure. It's not that big of a deal. And for me, it's good enough versus, having to break some of the fundamental security of Windows to make it work.
Can you run it as a different user as well?
Yeah, you can. You can do run as and run WT as a different user, and it'll work just fine. I've done that several times. I've run as like service accounts, or run as an admin account that I have, and it'll come up just fine.
So Justin, I think in PowerShell console, you can invoke a second console, a second PowerShell window to launch as another user, right? So you can log in and have that session launch. That's the same thing you're kind of doing as the right click run as. Is that possible from within a session?
Yeah, I mean you can do a run as, and you can elevate it and that kind of stuff. But what happens is it creates a completely separate process, and it has to tunnel everything back if you want that to exist in. It always opens a new window. And I'm sorry I interrupted you. Go ahead.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Does it open a new window? So now you have sort of non-admin and admin windows. Same thing you're doing, just a different way to get there.
Yeah, sure. If you wanted to do a run as, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it here. Run as /user UT. Oh well, because it's trying to get to a certain thing because it's a UAP app. With a little change, yeah, that would work just fine. You could make a quick shortcut. You can make a PowerShell function that is like admin time or something. You type that and have it come up. Sure.
Yeah.
But it would be a completely separate window. It can't be a tab inside the window because the window owns the process, and processes can't have child processes or admin processes fundamentally in Windows. I know that they've talked about it. I know there's tons of threads on it. But yeah, it might be on the 2.0 roadmap. I doubt it. But again, you would have to allow unprivileged processes to create admin processes, which is a straight up, if you want to open a whole new can of privilege escalation worms in 0 days, that's how you do it. So.
But you just said something.
Go ahead.
You just said something I never thought about, which is in the PowerShell world, it's always been one window, not tabs. So you launch another one, you create a separate window. So that explains a lot because the tabs are running in the same window. And as you said, the window owns the process. I never really considered that point.
Yeah, that's the main reason. Is like, now there are things like if you use there's a sudo command that comes with scoop that you can do commands from an unprivileged. But what it does is it starts an entirely new PowerShell process as admin using a local service, which is already running as admin. It just has kind of an RPC communication to it. And then it basically establishes a PS remoting session through a named pipe to get at that and then pull the information back. It's kind of like an intense PS remoting session. That's really intense, but that works. Yeah, and as Dustin said, like you can always ETSN to another server, and ETSN sessions are, sorry, ETSN is the quick shorthand for enter PS session. So you can do that to get to something else, and those are admin by default. So if you are a local administrator on the box. This one will probably fail because I haven't updated this in a bit. But oh no, it came up. By the way, this, in case you didn't know, this is a Linux box. So you can do PowerShell remoting to Linux boxes over SSH in PowerShell 7. But it's PowerShell. Yeah. There's my /home jgrote dir temp. This is a Linux box running out there in the world.
I feel like you covered so many nuggets of stuff tonight that it's definitely, I'm glad we're recording this so we can go back and like pick through stuff and really absorb a lot of the stuff that you said.
Well, as I said, it's a deep dive, and there's more to go to on these. But if you want to know more about the settings, there's great blogs. There is a roadmap for Windows Terminal 2.0, which is coming out, which we can bring up here. They did just announce the roadmap not too long ago. Yeah, 6 days ago. This will probably link me to the actual blog. I don't care about this. Is this it? Where? Yeah, thanks. So Kayla Cinnamon's the project manager on Windows Terminal. She's a great PowerShell contributor. She's in charge of a lot of the new projects like PowerShell Git and such. But here's basically the milestones that they're going for. This is what their cadence looks like. About every week, they're kind of trying to hit those. And then these are sort of their main ones. So one of their main things is getting a GUI for the JSON file so that you don't have to use the PowerShell or that. But, great for some people. And you can see like the development work on each of these just by going to these. Adding command palette, being able to tear off tabs into new windows, etc.
I think Jim had a question.
Sure.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Justin, great stuff. Like Mike said, so much here. This is sort of an esoteric question, but in the terminal itself, can you highlight vertically?
You mean like highlight like one column?
Yeah.
There might be a key binding for that. I usually don't usually do that. I don't have a use case for it, but
sometimes you'll get like a table output and you just want to grab,
I see what you're saying.
A couple of items from the middle,
I think there is a thing for that. I don't know if it's like a middle click or something, but let's do this. Let's see what's available in the keyboard shortcuts. Oops, did the wrong setting. So I'm just holding down Alt while I click settings there. Funny thing, I normally have a thing that will display like my Control Alt keys on the screen, but it doesn't work with Windows Terminal due to the way that Windows Terminal redirects stuff. So I have that turned off. But I can, if you don't know this with VS Code, here's another like fast tip. VS Code has this own thing built into it where you do toggle screencast mode. And now you'll see my Alt S, Alt Control. Really good for if you're like doing a demo, for your coworkers and stuff. They can see what you're doing with passwords.
So the short answer is it's in the chat. It's in Alt click.
Is it Alt click? Okay. Alt drag.
Click drag. Alt drag.
Oh, see, there you go. So yeah, Alt drag. There's your answer.
Alt drag. Thank you.
And I'm sure that is customizable. If we bring this up here. I didn't screw up this file. Now it's all mad at me because I changed something. But yeah, here's all the stuff like pane management, splitting panes, resizing them, moving the focus between them. So yeah, I didn't go too much into that, but like Alt Shift plus, minus, plus, plus, minus, plus for making panes. There, you can do close all tabs, change all tabs, clipboard integration, paste in, paste out, control insert to paste. Clip works. So if if I do test, pipe it into clip, that goes into my clipboard just fine. What other shortcuts? We've got visual adjust. Yeah, changing the font size. I like control mouse wheel to change font size, but it's also like control minus and plus works too. So yeah, good amount of stuff here. All kinds of tab management. You can set tabs to favorites. So you can say like Control Shift 1 to always open this particular kind of tab. Like Control Shift 4 is my SSH tab every time. There's a whole bunch of them. I think Control F4 is the default close. No, I think I rebound that. Close tab is unbound by default. Yeah. You can do Control Tab to switch between tabs and Control Shift Tab to go back. So you never have to. A lot of the stuff that you can do where you don't have to leave the. You don't have to move your hand to the mouse. You can keep your fingers on the home row. I showed the full screen before. You can use either F11 or Alt Enter to kind of get into a nice little like Zen mode of working. They are working on a quote unquote Quake mode. If you're not familiar with that, it's basically where you hit tilde and it comes down from the top and then goes back up. That is part of the 2.0 roadmap. So yeah, I just have one more thing which I'll show off, which is around my prompt. This is So prompts are built by these basically series of ASCII characters. And there's this function you have called function, if you dir function prompt. This is a built-in function that's in Windows where if you redefine it, you can set it to whatever you want. So this is just one example that I'm just showing of how I build prompts. So I have this module that I built called PowerPrompt, which lets you make these prompts. Basically, I went to all the work to figure out all the crazy ASCII custom codes you got to do to build prompts. So the way that this works is you have this new object that's a power prompt builder. So I'll start with $T. And so I have my prompt. And let me add hi, and let me add and then let me add, you know, okay, so now I have this prompt. And so it's got these 3 segments and it's got a color seed. And when I cast it to a string, it becomes the prompt. So that is a lot of magic, but that is all a PowerShell class. That's a PowerShell class that I can probably show it here. It might not let me actually do this again here. If I go to $T and type in GM, so this is a PowerShell class. It's called Prompt Builder, and it has a couple constructors, and it has a couple properties and methods, and it has this thing called overrides, which you can do, where you can actually override the OP addition and OP deletion. So if you have an object, when I do plus 5, what's happening here is it's actually calling a method on that class, and it'll do whatever I want. I could do $T plus 5 and have it go out to a website, download a file, and say hi. Like it'll do whatever you want. In this case, I just have an array that's built into the object, which is that prompt object. This is a generic list. And so this is just a standard array. It's got a couple objects in it. It's got these special prompt segments with the prompt, background color, separator, etc. And then when you just do a string, it just runs a thing that takes that array and outputs them in a nice ASCII style. So if I want to do something like test, and then it also supports these prompts. So add power prompt, dash separator. I want this separator for this one. I want the foreground color to be red. I want the background color to be blue. And then I'll add another segment. Okay. And let's make this foreground color green, background color yellow, and my separator, let's make it 3. Let's make it 3 vertical lines. So it's even got some things. It's like, hey, you didn't use a separator. I assume you meant to do this. And so now I have this funky path that also remembers all the things that I did. There's that blue and red. There's that. So really handy thing that is very early. If you want to see it, it's at my on my GitHub, justingrote.powerprompt. I don't have it on the gallery yet as a pre-release because there's some stuff I got to fix, but it works pretty well. I'm hoping to have this just be a really easy way if you want to customize your prompt and do fancy stuff. And so I have my if I reload this, I think it's test prompt loads my. All this does is call the function, and so I have this function prompt dir function prompt. Look at the source code there. Oh yeah. Into a. All I'm doing is I'm rewriting my prompt function, which gets called every time this comes up, to run this command, which basically builds the prompt. It just uses that, builds it, does some fancy stuff, like if I'm in a Terraform workspace, it contextually knows that and adds a prompt to it. So if I go to projects, it contextually adds these emojis based on where I am, like it knows this projects folder and just kind of makes it nice and short. If I went really deep in a folder, it would add like 3 dots to kind of shorten the thing. I noticed there's a question, what was the name of the dotnet thing to do the types from the schema? So that's actually, that's actually a node. I'll finish this real quick. So this prompt just gets built basically using that same prompt builder. And so if I go to one of my projects like this power prompt, if it detects that there's a Git repository in there, it automatically adds this portion to it, letting me know, okay, I'm on the master branch and I have this many things pending, sort of a simple Git status. And so there's things like, if you're familiar with like Oh My Posh, which is the most popular way to theme things, I rewrote this because Oh My Posh does some stuff that makes the prompt really slow. Like when you hit enter, it can be a real drag for that to come up sometimes. I basically re-optimized it, so made a new thing that would be really fast, but also make it so it's really easy to build these prompts and auto connect the segments so that if you add an additional segment to it, it automatically figures out the colors, does all the really crazy ASCII stuff to make it work. Like I think I have a way to show like what it actually looks like. I gotta clear out the escape. Okay, so let's do this. This is this. If I do $F dash replace back to E. Oh, you know what? This is fine. Yeah, okay. So this is what it actually looks like. So these are special ANSI codes that say 38, change it to this color, and then change reset, and then change to this. You see where like this is what I am saving you the trouble of having to learn how to do. Is that it's basically doing, if I do this like backtick E bracket 38 semicolon 2 zeros. This is all just ANSI stuff that's just incredibly convoluted. I gotta put it. That's how I change to that thing. Unless like if I make this like, that's how I make a blue one because it's an RGB value. Here's how I do a red one. And then you got to go through and fix it and clean it up. This prompt thing just fixes doing all that fancy prompt stuff. There's plenty of videos on this kind of prompt stuff that I won't go too much into that part of it. But this is just a nifty way to be able to build prompts really nicely. So I can do function prompt new power prompt, new power prompt builder plus I how are you, and then my local directory. And it probably crashed, I'm guessing. Let's test this outside first. Oh, I don't. There we go. So there's our fancy prompt. Now I just do function prompt, which will just run this every time. And that's my new prompt. And maybe I want to, you can change the color seed and all that kind of stuff. It just shows this took all that extra work of like having to write all this custom stuff and doing all this fancy stuff and making it really easy to build simple segments. And so people who want to be able to customize their prompt and have certain parts of it and use special code to do things, that's all now available to do things. And so if you look at my default prompt, it's not that complicated. If I go again, function prompt. Oh, that's right. I keep forgetting I save it as a global area. All this function is like, this is the full function that builds this entire prompt. It just simply checks if I had an error on my, I forgot to see let's see if that works. Now I got to fix that. Normally it will throw like a little explosion here if the previous command failed. That's what this part's all about. But so it starts a new power prompt builder, gets the get status as a prompt, and like if it is a thing, and if it's not a hide get status, I have a thing here where like if I'm in VS Code, don't show me my get status because it's already down at the bottom of VS Code, so I don't want my prompt to show it to me. That's a way to do a contextual thing. Set my Terraform workspace, and then add in what my current directory is, and then this function does all the extra work of like doing the tildes and the homes and stuff. Users, and then once I get to my actual home drive, it knows it's my home drive and changes it to that nice little icon. But ultimately, when it builds it, it just takes make the prompt output and just join this stuff together and then return it. And that does all the fancy formatting work.
Cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, can we look at the schema thing, that like go over how you were doing that, building
Sure.
the schema from that module?
So this is a little bit roundabout. I actually use a Node.js thing called QuickType. There's this site called QuickType if you go here. And so what this you can do is you can take, right here it says, you can take any JSON file, and it doesn't have to be a schema, it can just be a JSON file, and generate types for them, like generate basically like class blueprints for them, generate classes for them, that work and meet all the requirements. It's a really nifty thing that you can just, and they have this really nice web interface, but they also have a command line thing. So here's an example of that terminal settings. This is literally just the JSON schema taken from this URL. And so it took it and converted it into C# code. And so I just take this C# code, import it into PowerShell, and now I have .NET types I can work with. And now the rest of my code is just manipulating these .NET types and calling those types. So you can do it you can do it manually by just using this site, and it's not just C#. It's you can do TypeScript, all kinds of stuff. I don't remember where is the options. Here we go. So yeah, you can do C++, you can do Go, you can do Java, you can do Kotlin. It's a pretty powerful thing to change these. But it does run on top of Node.js. So you have to use Node.js to do the local one. And so, but this is just part of my build process. Is when I run a build for it, it automatically downloads this, runs it through the QuickType thing, and then makes it a DLL, saves it in my output, and then I bring it in through add type to PowerShell. And now I just have the types available. And you'll see that if I should have the types here.
Okay, so let me stop you quickly, just so I make sure I missed it right there. So in your build process, you download the latest schema, you then run it through that, then gives you the classes, and then you make a DLL out of it, and then then you import, then you add that to your manifest for your module.
Yeah, basically what I'm doing is I'm using it to generate a C# class library in assembly, and then bring that into PowerShell, because PowerShell can use everything that's in .NET. And so now I have these predefined classes that are fairly simple, just like you would build PowerShell classes, and it also comes with the code to automatically save to the JSON file and back. So all of that was done for me by QuickType. And all I do is wrap those new objects with PowerShell code. Let me see if I can just open the repository, and I'll show you what it looks like, just like it is an example of a command.
Cool.
I use invoke build for my build process. I actually have a full continuous deployment process called PowerCD, which is available on my thing. But it is, if you're not me, it's completely impenetrable, and I'm working on that. I don't make it easy to start with, but it's a really powerful alternative to like PowerShell build, those kind of things. Like Brandon Olin does such a great module, and I wanted to make something that works with it. But anyhow, in here you should be able to see the portion that does it. Is this it? This copies it. I don't remember where I do my actual building. This might be, no, this is the current release. Oh, that's right. It's one of the private things. So I periodically build it. And so here's the original schema. And then there's a .NET restore that runs that actually does the compile as part of it. Search for. Yeah, here we go. Update WT QuickType. So here's where I take that in. I make a couple little changes to the schema that's not quite right. I change how the JSON is handled a little bit, and then I output that file. And then here's where I run this QuickType from Node.js, which gets pulled in as a dependency. And all it does is I want to make a schema. I want my namespace to be Windows Terminal. I want my numbers to be decimal. I want normal density as opposed to, basically it's how it formats the document. I want my arrays to be lists because I like lists. And I want to output at this destination. And here's that JSON that came out of the previous command. That's it. So what it does is it takes that schema and then makes a whole new file. And it doesn't have to be a schema. You can use the JSON schema if someone made it. But if you just write a JSON file and you make things, it will guess what the classes should have been, and make classes with properties and all that kind of stuff. Really slick piece of software. So then those just get imported here, get content, add type. And so if I go into, for instance, one of my terminals that has it, and I'm still learning my WT shortcut because I keep forgetting. I'll just import. In fact, if I do verbose preference, import MS settings, import module helps. You'll see it in here. So there's those special formats. And It might not show up here because I think I do an internal assembly import. Profile. And so here's
So
one of the
I'll,
objects that it generates with all the properties and everything. And so you can manipulate this just like an object. And so my stuff all just manipulates that stuff. So these commands, public, it's just running using those objects. And it's all boils down to, I think this, I have one command in here somewhere that boils everything down.
Yeah. Top says using namespace. And
yeah. So it's layers upon layers of concepts, but this is one of those things that like was so great about PowerShell is just glue all this stuff together, like dynamic parameters. All those parameters just get generated here as part of the dynamic parameter set. So if I go like get MS terminal profile, this is going really deep, but you don't need to know any of this to use Windows Terminal. This is just showing how I do the JSON stuff and not have to write any of it. There's the, I think it's get MS terminal. Here we go. So dynamic params. I have a thing that goes out, reads the JSON, or reads the object type and what parameters I want, and then automatically builds those parameters with just kind of a fairly short bit of code here, but it's more involved somewhere else. And so just with this code, it's just a really simple way to just take any object and take its properties and turn them into dynamic parameters for the command. And then all this takes those, builds them, just takes the objects, and then uses, takes the profile and adds the properties to that profile. And so it all just kind of just stacks on top of each other until you got this pretty cool module that's all mostly auto-generated.
that was super cool. All right. Any other questions, everybody? Like, I'm just like, I definitely need to watch this recording again. I appreciate the tons of great content, Justin.
Sure. I'll just put up a last thing here. So the demo script is here. I have it for the previous Portland user group, but it's been kept up to date so that URL will still work. Here's the Ignite session on Windows Terminal. There is a newer MS Build session that covers some of the newer stuff. The Windows Command Line blog is a great place to follow. And then my GitHub has all kinds of fun stuff on it. But this is for that power prompt that I showed earlier. MS Terminal settings is under GPDuck. This is where this module lives. It's this is all being developed under the Release 2.0 branch, but this will eventually move to preview and then eventually master once we make sure we got all the bugs squashed and everything. But the master should have a pretty good README that covers, yeah. So if you go to the Release 2.0 here, it's got a pretty good README that covers what's new and has nice little GIF demos of all the neat stuff it can do. It's got automatic auto completion, all these support for defaults.
Super cool.
That's what I wanted to do right there. There's a cute bat. My partner has a thing for bats, so every time I do this demo, she's like, "It's got to be a bat." I'm like, "Okay."
Cool.
All right. So thank you everybody for your time. As always, hope this was helpful. Like when I said, it was a deep dive. I wasn't kidding. So next time, ask me to do an overview.